Learning Module 4.1 will review some of the basic guidelines for Deliverable 4, the Research Study Design or Prospectus. This, along with the Deliverable 5 presentation, represents the culmination of your research project for Writing 250. What is a prospectus? Literally, it's a forward look from the Latin roots. Basically, it's a formal proposal for something you want to do. A research prospectus is a formal proposal for a research project that you want to conduct. If you think back to the informal topic proposal, the prospectus is essentially an expansion of that. When you wrote it, I asked you to think about how it could serve as the framework for future projects. Well, the prospectus is the logical result of that frame. Don't forget, you're proposing a research project. You don't already have the answer to your research question. You may have a hypothesis, but the whole purpose of the proposal is to secure approval to conduct a study to either confirm or refute that hypothesis. If that still doesn't make sense, another way to think about the prospectus is as a sales pitch. Imagine you are trying to get a group of people to fund your project. They need assurances that you are credible and that your project is a valid one for the field before they give you their money. The prospectus is in large part a combination of work you have already done this semester. Your literature review, annotated bibliography, and set of research toolbox posts all contribute in different ways to the larger prospectus document. The new material for the prospectus consists primarily of the primary research plan you'll be describing and the reflection and report on the in-class mini-survey. You'll combine these with the condensed version of the literature review, an introduction, conclusion, and finally an abstract for the entire prospectus. So what should a prospectus do? Basically, you're going to be doing four things. One, and most importantly, explain what you hope to prove in your research. This is the why question. What is the larger significance of your project to the field? To whom does it matter and why? 2. List the secondary sources you have found and briefly review them in the literature review section. This provides an essential foundation of secondary research upon which your project will be built. 3. Show that your project is feasible and possible. The emphasis here should be placed on whether or not a well-informed person would deem your project to be realistic for your specific field. Finally, show that your project is useful. This is where the gap you were supposed to address in the literature review comes in. Show that the research project is necessary and solves a problem that doesn't already have a clear, agreed-upon solution. Part of your prospectus will be a reflection and report on the mini-survey activity we'll be conducting. Since this is an online class, it isn't practical for me to ask you to go out and do actual primary research. Instead, you're going to design a simple online survey, distribute it to each other, and then analyze the results. Realize that you probably won't get extremely relevant results from this survey. That isn't the point. The point is to design questions, distribute a survey, and then analyze the answers to those questions to try to develop good strategies for designing surveys. You'll be designing your questions as a part of RT 4.2. Since your subject pool is other Writing 250 students, think about what kinds of feedback they can give you on your research project. This might require some thinking outside the box. For example, if your research project is about prisoner recidivism, most of the students in the class are probably not ex-cons. However, you could ask them questions about their feelings towards ex-cons, what experience they might have working with them, or whether or not they know any ex-cons who have had trouble staying straight. Again, the point here is not to get earth-shattering data. It's just experiencing the process. Familiarize yourself with Qualtrics by looking at the links in the Primary Research Materials folder and by looking at the sample survey also in the Primary Research Materials folder. You'll design the 10 questions for RT 4.2. Try to use at least 3 types of questions with at least one being qualitative, free response, short answer, or similar. We'll distribute the surveys through a discussion forum on Blackboard next week. You'll be reporting the results from the mini-survey and reflecting on what you learned about surveys in general in the prospectus. Lastly, my suggested structure for the prospectus is split into 5 parts. You don't have to follow the structure, and if you look at the 2 sample papers, there are some deviations. However, I think this is a good, efficient way of putting it together. Even though the prospectus will begin with an abstract, write that last. The body of the prospectus should have an introduction followed by a condensation of the literature review. Think about how you can reduce the literature review you wrote for deliverable 3 to the lowest common denominator. What are the most important claims? Note that it really isn't as simple as cutting and pasting paragraphs from deliverable 3. Focus on condensations. Highlight the important concepts and support them. In the second section, talk about the mini-survey. If you found out some useful data, you can report that. If not, just reflect on the process and how designing the mini-survey helped you design a more realistic primary research study design. In the next section, describe your research project itself. This is the brand new piece of material for the prospectus. Describe your methods and what you seek to accomplish in as much detail as you can. Finally, end with a strong conclusion that defends your project. This is your last chance to make a case for the project. Pretend you are trying to sell it to investors. What is the takeaway for them? What makes your project essential? If you follow this structure, you should come away with a relatively well-rounded prospectus.